Jake Carter stood in the shadows of the scrapyard, wiping grease from his hands with a rag. It was late, far too late for anyone to be working at the small, rundown spaceport on the edge of the galaxy. But Jake didn't mind. He liked the quiet. He liked being left alone with the machines. They didn't ask questions. They didn't judge. They just needed fixing. And Jake was the best at it. The outer rim of the galaxy wasn't much. It was a forgotten place, full of old ships, broken equipment, and forgotten technology. Most people thought the edge of space was just an empty wasteland. Jake thought it was a perfect place to hide from the chaos of the universe. All he needed was his tools, his ship, and the peace that came with working on broken things. But tonight, as Jake stood alone under the flickering lights of the scrapyard, something felt different. The air had a strange, tense quality to it, like the calm before a storm. His hand paused mid-motion, wiping the grease from his brow. The sound of something new, someone moving in the shadows, caught his attention. Jake stiffened, instinctively reaching for his wrench, but the sound wasn't the familiar clank of old machinery. It was something larger, something alive. He didn't know why, but his feet moved toward the sound without hesitation. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the way his instincts screamed that something wasn't right. He made his way across the junkyard, stepping over piles of metal and broken ship parts. Then, he saw it. Two enormous shapes were half hidden by the debris. At first, they looked like nothing more than shadows, dark, towering figures barely visible in the dim light. But as Jake drew closer, his heart nearly stopped. Two massive creatures lay before him, their scales glistening faintly in the light. They were dragons, giant, winged creatures with eyes that shone with an eerie, otherworldly glow. Their bodies were covered in deep scars, and their wings looked shredded and broken. Energy crackled weakly from their bodies as if they were slowly dying. Jake stared, unsure of what he was seeing. Dragons. He had heard the old stories, the legends of great creatures that once roamed the skies. But everyone knew those stories were just myths, right? No one had seen a real dragon in centuries. Certainly not here, on the outskirts of space. And definitely not in such a sorry state. One of the dragons lifted its head slightly, its eyes locking onto Jake. The creature let out a low, rumbling growl that made the ground beneath Jake's feet vibrate. He took a step back, feeling a cold rush of fear sweep through him. But then, something strange happened. The dragon's gaze softened. Its growl faded into something closer to a whisper, a plea for help. Jake's heart skipped a beat. He had no idea what to do. He had never dealt with creatures like these. Heck, he had barely even seen one before. But there was something in the dragon's eyes, something human, that reached out to him. It was as if it was asking for help, as if it knew Jake could do something for it, without thinking. Jake dropped his wrench and knelt by the dragon. His hand shook as he ran his fingers along the creature's side. The scales were cool to the touch, smooth and metallic, yet oddly organic. There were deep gashes along the dragon's body, as though something had torn through it, something far beyond the kind of damage a simple battle would cause. The wounds seemed unnatural, as if the creature had been attacked by something otherworldly. Jake swallowed hard. He didn't know anything about dragons, but he knew machines. And this was something he could fix. It wasn't the same as a broken engine or a damaged hull, but there were similarities. He could repair what was broken. He had to. Moving quickly, Jake rummaged through his toolkit, his hands working with a mechanical precision he had honed over years of fixing ships and engines. He took out a small plasma torch and carefully began sealing the dragon's wounds, applying heat and energy to close the gashes in its hide. The creature didn't react, but Jake could feel the tension in its body slowly ease as he worked. It was almost as if it trusted him. As he worked, he heard a soft sound from the other dragon. It was a faint whisper, but it was enough to draw Jake's attention. The second dragon was still breathing, but barely. Its body was covered in similar scars, but its eyes were closed, and it seemed to be in a deep, almost comatose state. Jake turned to the second dragon, feeling a surge of determination. If he could save one, maybe he could save both. After what felt like hours, Jake finally finished his work. Both dragons' wounds were sealed, and their energy levels were rising, albeit slowly. The creatures still seemed weak, but they were alive. Jake stood up and wiped the sweat from his brow. His hands were trembling, and he felt a rush of adrenaline course through him. He had done it. He had saved them. But as he looked down at the dragons, his mind raced with questions. Who were they? What were they doing here? Why had they come to him of all people? Before Jake could think any further, a low voice filled the air. A voice unlike anything he had ever heard. It wasn't spoken aloud, it was inside his mind. You have saved us, the voice said. It was deep, resonant, and carried the weight of ages. You are a mechanic, but there is much more to you than that. You have touched the legacy of our kind. Jake froze. The voice was not coming from his surroundings, but from the dragons themselves. The second dragon, the one that had been unconscious, slowly lifted its head and fixed its gaze on Jake. I am Pyrrha, it said, its voice a soft echo in Jake's mind. And this is Viewership. Jake swallowed hard. What are you? He whispered, more to himself than to the dragons. What do you want from me? Pyrrha's eyes flickered with something that could only be described as ancient wisdom. We are the last of the Titan dragons, she said, her voice carrying a quiet strength. And you have been chosen? Jake blinked, the weight of her words slowly sinking in. Chosen? For what? Before he could ask another question, the dragon's voice continued. There is a secret we must share. Pyrrha said, one that will change everything. Jake stood frozen, staring at the two dragons lying before him. The soft glow from their bodies illuminated the scrapyard around them, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch out into the darkness. The world felt different now, as if the ground beneath his feet wasn't quite as solid as it used to be. He glanced between the two dragons, Pyrrha and Viewership, unsure of what to do or say. He had always been a mechanic, not some kind of hero. He was a fixer, not a leader. But there they were, the last of their kind, waiting for him to make sense of the impossible. You are the last of the Titan dragons? Jake asked, his voice trembling slightly. He hadn't meant to sound so unsure, but the words felt foreign to him. Pyrrha's eyes, glowing faintly like to distant stars, flickered as if she understood his confusion. Yes, she answered, her voice not spoken aloud but inside Jake's mind. It was like the words were whispers from another world, something ancient and powerful. How is that possible? I thought you were just a myth, Jake said, still in disbelief. The stories about dragons had been told for centuries, passed down from generation to generation. But myths were all they were. Everyone knew that. Many think that. Viewership rumbled, his voice deep and low, a sound that vibrated in Jake's chest. But myths have truth hidden in them, often buried for a reason. He paused, as if carefully choosing his next words. We are not what you think we are. We were the rulers of the skies once, but we are no longer. Our race fell long ago, but we remain. Jake took a step forward, his mind racing. You said I've been chosen. Chosen for what? What do you want with me? Pyrrha's gaze softened as she shifted slightly, her wings flickering with faint energy. It is not what we want from you, Humyn, she said gently. It is what you can help us with. Jake's heart pounded in his chest. Help you with? What do you mean? Viewership lifted his massive head, his eyes locking onto Jake's. There's a secret buried deep within the history of your kind, a power that was hidden long ago. A power that I left behind. Jake's mind spun. A power? He repeated, trying to understand. What kind of power are you talking about? Pyrrha looked towards Viewership and then back at Jake. The power of the ancient world. The knowledge and technology that our people once possessed. The power to change the course of the universe itself. Her eyes glowed brighter as she spoke. And it lies within you, Jake Carter. Jake's heart skipped a beat. Within me? What are you talking about? I'm just a mechanic. I fix broken ships. I don't know anything about it. Viewership cut him off, his voice firm. You are not just a mechanic, Jake. You are much more than that. You were chosen by the forces that brought us together. The legacy of our kind runs through your blood. You have the potential to awaken what has been forgotten. Jake blinked. What does that mean? How can I have something to do with all this? The dragons were silent for a moment. It was as if they were debating whether they should reveal more. But then Pyrrha spoke again. her voice filled with ancient wisdom, long before the war that destroyed our world. We shared our knowledge with the humans. We helped guide you. We were the ones who taught your ancestors how to build ships, how to travel through the stars. We gave you the foundations of your civilization. But when the war came, we made the mistake of thinking you were not ready for the full extent of our power. Jake listened, hanging on every word. This was impossible to process. How could the dragons have been involved in humanity's rise? And why hadn't anyone told him this before? We left the secret behind, Viewership continued. We hid it in the human genome, buried deep within the very structure of your species. But to unlock it, someone with the right heart and mind must find it. You, Jake, have the potential to awaken that power. But it will not come without a cost. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. What do you mean, a cost? The dragons looked at each other, as if considering how much they should say. Pyrrha was the one to speak again. The power we speak of is not just a gift. It is a responsibility. It has the potential to bring great change, but it can also destroy. Our race fell because we misused our knowledge. We believed we could control it, but we were wrong. We lost everything. So you're telling me I have this power inside me? Jake asked, his voice barely a whisper. The idea was overwhelming. He was just an ordinary guy, a mechanic. What could he possibly do with something like that? You already have begun to unlock it, Pyrrha said, her voice soft but steady. By saving us. Your actions, your compassion, and your ability to fix what is broken, those are the qualities we need in a leader. We can guide you, but you must be willing to listen. Jake stepped back, his mind in a whirlwind. It was too much. He was just a mechanic, just a guy fixing broken ships and machines. He wasn't a leader. He didn't want to be. All of this was too big for him, but the dragons were watching him closely, and he knew they weren't going to let him walk away. Not now, not when they had already put so much trust in him. So, what happens now? Jake asked, the question sounding weak even to him. Now, Viewership said, his voice gravely and deep. You begin the journey. You will have to uncover the truth buried within the ancient knowledge. But first, we must protect you. The forces that destroyed us will not stop. They will hunt you. They will come for us both. Jake's heart raced again. Who would want to stop us? Who would want to destroy you? The dragon shared a long, heavy look. Pyrrha's eyes narrowed. There are others who seek the power we left behind. They are not like us. They want to use it for their own gain, and they will stop at nothing to find it. Jake swallowed hard, trying to make sense of it all. Who are they? The dragons did not answer immediately. Instead, they shared a quiet, knowing look, as if they had already known this moment would come. We call them the Nullers, Pyrrha said finally, her voice cold. A faction of humans who believe they can control the power we left behind. They will stop at nothing to take it from you. Jake's stomach turned. This was no longer just about fixing ships or helping a couple of injured dragons. This was about something much bigger, something that could change everything. And now, he was right in the middle of it. Then we have no time to waste, Jake said. His voice suddenly filled with determination. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing for sure: he wasn't going to back down. The stars above the hidden planet glowed faintly, casting a soft light over the barren landscape. The silence was thick, broken only by the soft hum of Jake's ship as it floated in orbit above the desolate world. Below, deep in the rocky valleys, was the ancient site where the dragons had revealed that humanity's future was hidden. If they could find it. Jake, still trying to process everything he had learned, stood next to the dragons on the ship's observation deck. They hadn't spoken much since they left the scrapyard. The journey through deep space had been long, and the tension in the air was palpable. It wasn't just the threat of the Nullers. Something about this mission felt heavier than anything Jake had ever faced before. He wasn't just a mechanic anymore. He was part of something much bigger, something that could either save or destroy everything he knew. Pyrrha was the first to speak, her voice calm but filled with the weight of centuries of experience. This place, she said, her glowing eyes scanning the desolate surface below, was once our greatest city, the place where we stored the knowledge of our kind. But it was also where our downfall began. Jake felt the weight of her words. It wasn't just about finding technology anymore. It was about discovering the mistakes of the past. Mistakes that had nearly wiped out an entire species. Viewership, still recovering from his earlier injuries, spoke next, his voice low and steady. The Nullers are closer than you think, Jake. They know we are here, and they will stop at nothing to find us. Their leaders are ruthless. They have no hesitation in doing whatever it takes to take control of the power we left behind. Jake frowned. Who are these Nullers, exactly? You keep mentioning them, but you said little about them. Pyrrha glanced toward him, her eyes reflecting a distant memory. The Nullers are a faction within the Humyn government. They believe that our knowledge is too dangerous for anyone but them to control. They see themselves as the rightful inheritors of our legacy, and they will do anything to make sure no one else can unlock the secrets we left behind. Jake shook his head in disbelief. But they're humans? Why would they want to destroy the knowledge? Shouldn't they want to share it with everyone? Viewership snorted softly, a sound like distant thunder. Not all humans think alike, Jake. Some believe that knowledge is power, and power, when controlled by the wrong hands, can lead to ruin. The Nullers think that if they control the power we hid, they can become the rulers of all humanity. They do not care about the balance of the galaxy. They care only about control. Jake thought about this for a moment, his eyes narrowing. The thought of other humans turning against him against everything he knew was hard to accept. But Pyrrha's words lingered in his mind. The power they were talking about wasn't just a tool. It was a weapon, and the Nullers would do anything to possess it. Suddenly, the ship's radar beeped, a harsh, metallic sound that shattered the quiet tension. The display screen flashed red. Vi Rex turned sharply. They found us. Jake's heart raced. What? How could they? Before he could finish, Pyrrha's voice filled his mind, urgent and clear. Prepare yourself. We need to move. Now. Without another word, Jake rushed to the controls, his hands flying over the buttons and switches. The ship lurched into motion, rocketing away from the planet's surface. As the ship shot through space, Jake glanced back at the distant surface of the planet. In the distance, he saw flashes of movement, small ships, glinting in the starlight. Racing toward them, the Nullers weren't far behind. The battle began quickly. The Nullers were skilled, their ships sleek and fast, designed for one purpose, pursuit. Their fleet wasn't large, but their tactics were precise. They knew exactly where to strike, where to corner their prey. Jake had faced enemies in the past, but nothing like this. The Nullers weren't just a threat, they were a well-trained, cold-blooded machine, incoming. Viewership growled as a barrage of plasma missiles flew past their ship, narrowly missing. Jake tightened his grip on the controls, swerving the ship to avoid the deadly projectiles. His heart pounded, the adrenaline rush making his hands shake. This wasn't just a routine repair job anymore. This was a fight for survival. Viewership, Pyrrha, Jake shouted. How do we fight back? We don't have weapons like they do. Pyrrha's voice rang in his mind. You do not need weapons. The greatest weapon you possess is your mind. Think, Jake. You have the power to adapt, to repair. Use that. Jake gritted his teeth, focusing. He thought about his training as a mechanic, how he had always been able to find a way to fix things, even when it seemed impossible. The Nullers' ships were fast, but they weren't invincible. And if there was one thing Jake knew, it was that every machine, no matter how advanced, had a weakness. All right, Jake muttered to himself, scanning the ship's systems. Let's see what we can do. He quickly began rerouting power from the engines to the ship's shields, boosting their strength just enough to absorb the impact of the next round of missiles. At the same time, he disabled non-essential systems, freeing up power to the ship's weapons, modest but effective in close combat. The Nullers fired again, their missiles tracking the ship's every movement. But this time, the shields held. The ship shuddered under the pressure, but it held together. Nice work, Jake, Viewership rumbled. Impressed. But this is only the beginning, as Jake piloted the ship through a series of evasive maneuvers. Pyrrha's voice echoed in his mind once more. There's a way to stop them, Jake, but it will take more than just skill with the ship's systems. Tell me what to do, Jake said urgently. The power you are seeking is hidden in the depths of your mind, just as it was hidden in the stars, Pyrrha explained. To unlock it, you must first understand the cost. You must be willing to let go of what you know, to embrace the unknown. The Nullers will try to force you into their control. But you are not like them. Jake's head spun with the weight of her words. Could he truly unlock the power they spoke of? And if he did, would it be enough to stop the Nullers? Would it be enough to stop them from destroying everything? Suddenly, an explosion rocked the ship. The hull groaned under the strain as a missile scored to direct it, causing the ship's systems to flicker and fail. Jake's fingers flew over the controls, trying to keep everything stable. Jake, Pyrrha cried, her voice laced with urgency. You must act now. The power is inside you, but you must focus. Trust yourself. Trust what we've told you. As the Nullers' ships closed in for the final strike, Jake felt something stir deep within him. It wasn't just his mind at work anymore. It was something deeper, something ancient, a power he had never imagined. And as the Nullers moved in for the kill, Jake Carter made a choice that would change everything. The stars around them blurred into streaks of light as Jake pushed the ship to its limits. The Nullers were closing in fast, their ship slicing through space with terrifying precision. Jake's heart raced in time with the pounding of the ship's engines. He could feel the pressure of every decision weighing on him. The dragons, once mysterious and ancient beings, were now his allies, perhaps even his only hope for survival. Hold on tight, Jake shouted over the rumble of the ship as another missile exploded against the shield. Sparks flew from the control panel, and the lights flickered briefly, but the ship held together. Barely, Varx's voice filled his mind, calm but firm. You are doing well, Jake, but you must understand that this is only a test. The Nullers want more than just our capture. They want the power that lies within you. They will stop at nothing to make sure you don't unlock it. Jake clenched his fists around the controls. Then we won't let them take it, he muttered, his voice full of determination. Pyrrha's voice followed, her words sharp and clear. You must be ready, Jake. You have unlocked a fraction of the power we spoke of. But the real test has yet to come. The knowledge we have left for you is inside your mind, hidden deep within your soul. But you must be willing to face your darkest fears to unlock it. Jake shook his head, his mind spinning. My darkest fears. What do you mean? You will see. Pyrrha answered cryptically. The journey to unlocking your full potential will take you into the heart of what it means to be human. To understand the power we left behind, you must first understand yourself. Your choices will define the future of humanity. Before Jake could respond, a violent jolt rocked the ship. The ship's alarms blared as more missiles came crashing toward them. He could see the Nullers' ships now, closing in from every direction. He needed to think quickly. They were running out of time. Virux, Jake shouted, his hands moving over the controls again, trying to stabilize the ship. I need a way out of this. Varx's voice echoed in his mind again, as if the dragon had been expecting this moment. You have already begun to learn how to control the energy that flows through you, Jake. But it is not enough to only think. You must feel it. You must embrace the power inside you. Only then will you be able to overcome them. Jake closed his eyes, focusing on the words the dragons had told him. He thought about the first time he had fixed a broken engine, the calm he felt when the parts clicked together perfectly. He thought about the quiet moments when he was alone in his workshop, the world outside fading away as he lost himself in the rhythm of repair. But this was different. This wasn't just about machines, it was about himself. It was about facing the part of him he had always tried to hide, the part of him that feared failure, the part of him that was afraid of what would happen if he failed. A voice inside him whispered, "It's not about fixing things anymore, Jake. It's about fixing yourself." Jake opened his eyes. His gaze focused on the flashing control panel in front of him. He could feel something deep inside, a strange energy, as though the ship itself was calling to him. It was a hum, a vibration that seemed to resonate in his bones. The power the dragon spoke of was real. It was right there, waiting for him to reach out and claim it. With a deep breath, Jake reached into that power. He closed his eyes again, allowing himself to feel it, to understand it. For a moment, everything felt still. The ship, the missiles, Even the roar of the engines faded into the background. It was just Jake alone in his thoughts. Facing the deepest part of himself, images flooded his mind, memories of his past moments, when he had been too afraid to step up, too afraid to take a risk. The faces of people he had failed to help, the quiet moments of doubt, the fear that he wasn't enough, that he would never be enough. But then, something changed. Jake felt a surge of warmth, a sense of understanding that filled him completely. The fear he had always carried with him began to fade, replaced by a sense of purpose. The power was not something to be controlled, it was a part of him. It always had been. Suddenly, the ship's systems roared back to life. The controls in his hands felt natural, like they were an extension of his own body. The energy inside him had connected with the ship's systems, amplifying his every movement. He could feel the ship responding to his will, shifting with incredible precision. Jake. Pyrrha's voice came through his mind again, softer now. You have unlocked it. You have begun to understand the true power. But remember, the choices you make from here on will define who you are and who humanity becomes. Jake opened his eyes and glanced at the radar. The nullers were still closing in, but something had changed. He wasn't just trying to escape anymore. He wasn't just trying to survive. Now, he was ready to fight back, with a determined glance. Jake punched a series of commands into the control panel. The ship shuddered as new energy surged through the system. Jake could feel the hum of power radiating from the ship's core. The missiles launched at them were no longer a threat. With a flick of a switch, Jake turned the ship sharply, sending the missiles spiraling into deep space. He didn't even need to look, he could feel where the missiles would go. He could feel the trajectory, the path, like it was second nature. Now, Jake, Varx's deep voice rumbled. Use your power. Jake didn't hesitate. He focused again, his mind sensing with the ship. The energy was flowing through him, and he pushed it forward. The ship shot forward at an incredible speed, weaving through the Nuller's ships with lightning-quick reflexes. It was as if the ship itself was alive, responding to Jake's every thought. The Nuller's ships tried to follow, but they were no match for Jake's newfound ability. With one final command, Jake concentrated all the energy into the ship's front shield, creating an explosive shockwave that sent the Nuller's fleet spiraling off course. The shockwave was enough to disable several of their ships, forcing the remaining vessels to retreat. For a moment, the stars around them were silent. The battle was over for now. Jake leaned back in his seat, his heart still racing, but there was a new calmness to him. He had done it. He had unlocked the power. But he knew this was only the beginning. We've won this round, Jake muttered, wiping the sweat from his forehead. But what's next? Pyrrha's voice came again, calm and knowing. You have faced the first trial, Jake. You've learned what you are capable of. But there is much more to come. The Nullers will not stop, and now, you must decide how far are you willing to go to protect humanity from the dangers that lie ahead. Jake took a deep breath, his eyes scanning the endless void of space. As far as I have to, he said quietly. We can't let the past mistakes repeat themselves. Not again. The future was uncertain. But Jake was no longer afraid. He had unlocked the power within him, and now, he was ready to face whatever came next. Jake stared out the ship's viewport, watching as the stars flickered past in a blur of white streaks. He had learned to focus on the energy flowing within him, something ancient, something powerful, and now, for the first time, he felt in control. He had always been just a mechanic, just a man who fixed broken things. But everything had changed. The Nullers had been pushed back for now, but Jake knew this was far from over. The battle they had just fought was only a small skirmish. The real war was still ahead. Jake, Pyrrha's voice filled his mind, her tone soft but full of meaning. You have done well. You have proven yourself to be worthy of the power we entrusted you with. Jake didn't respond immediately. His mind was still racing, processing everything that had happened. The way he had felt the energy surge through him. The way the ship had almost seemed to respond to his thoughts. It was overwhelming. He had unlocked something deep within himself. Something that felt like it was both a part of him and far beyond his understanding. But that was just the beginning. There was much more to come. Pyrrha, Jake said, his voice quiet. What now? We fought off the Nullers for now, but they're not going to stop. How do we make sure they don't get their hands on the power we've found?" There was a pause, and Jake could feel Pyrrha's gaze on him. Even though she was no longer physically present in the ship, the communication link between them felt almost intimate, as if they were one mind instead of two separate beings. "The Nullers are only one threat, Jake," she said softly. "There are others who would seek to control the power of the dragons. And the power within you, it has a cost. You must be prepared to face more than just the Nullers." Jake felt a knot form in his stomach. "What do you mean by a cost?" he asked, his voice tinged with worry. "I've already faced my fears. I've unlocked the power. What more could there be?" Pyrrha's voice was gentle, but filled with the weight of centuries of experience. "The power you carry within you is not just a gift, Jake. It is a responsibility. The forces you are up against are much older and more dangerous than you can imagine. Your journey has only just begun." As she spoke, the weight of her words settled on Jake's shoulders. He had unlocked a power greater than anything he had ever known. But with that power came the realization that he wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. He was fighting for humanity, fighting to prevent the mistakes of the past from repeating. Suddenly, the ship's radar beeped, and the calm that had settled over Jake vanished in an instant. He turned to the control panel, his fingers moving quickly as he scanned the incoming data. "They're back," Jake muttered, his voice tight with urgency. "Who?" Varx's voice came through the communication system. He had been silent for a while, recovering from his earlier injuries, but now he was fully alert, his deep voice filled with concern. "The Nullers," Jake said, his hands flying over the controls. "They've regrouped, and they're coming for us again." "Then we fight," Varix said with unshakable confidence. "We've seen what you can do, Jake. You can take them on." Jake nodded, though doubt still lingered in his mind. The Nullers had been relentless before, and now they would be even more determined. They would stop at nothing to take the power Jake had unlocked. And he knew it wasn't just about the dragons anymore. It was about the fate of all of humanity. The ship jolted again, and the view in the distance grew clearer. A large fleet of Nuller ships, much larger than before, was closing in. There were more of them this time, more firepower, more soldiers. Jake knew they wouldn't have the luxury of fighting from a distance anymore. He had to take the fight to them. Varix spoke again, his voice low but full of fire. "Jake, you must embrace the full extent of your power now. The time for hesitation is over. You've already learned how to harness the energy. Now, it's time to use it to protect everything you care about." Jake's heart beat faster. He knew what he had to do. He had to face the Nullers head-on, not just as a mechanic, not just as someone who fixed things, but as the person who held the fate of the galaxy in his hands. He looked out at the approaching fleet. He could feel the power coursing through his veins, the energy that he had unlocked from deep within. It was no longer just about saving himself. It was about saving the future. "Let's do this," Jake said, his voice full of determination. His fingers moved swiftly over the controls, and the ship roared to life. He wasn't going to run anymore. He was going to fight. The battle that followed was fierce. Jake piloted the ship with precision, feeling the energy surge with every turn, every maneuver. The Nullers' ships were fast, but Jake had learned to move faster. He could feel the ship as though it were an extension of himself. The controls responded to his thoughts, and with every move, he could see the Nullers' ships slipping further behind. But they didn't stop. They kept coming, their firepower relentless. "Pyrrha," Jake called out, "tell me what to do. How do I stop them?" "You must unlock the final stage of the power, Jake," she answered, her voice calm but insistent. "It is not just the ship you control now. It is your mind, your soul. The energy you carry can destroy them, but it can also destroy you. You must be willing to risk everything." Jake took a deep breath, steadying himself. He had already faced his fears, had already unlocked the power inside him. But this was different. This was the final step. If he wanted to protect everything he loved, he had to take this final leap. He closed his eyes, letting the energy flow through him completely. He let go of the fear, the doubt, everything that had held him back before. The power surged, and the ship shuddered as though it was alive, reacting to his every thought. Jake's hands moved over the controls, but this time it was different. He wasn't just piloting the ship. He was commanding the energy, guiding it with every pulse of his mind. A brilliant light erupted from the ship, blinding in its intensity. The Nuller's ships didn't stand a chance. They were torn apart, their shields failing under the sheer force of the energy Jake had unleashed. The light faded, and for a moment, everything was still. Jake opened his eyes, his breath coming in heavy gasps. The Nuller's fleet had been wiped out, but the cost was heavy. His mind felt drained, his body exhausted. He had pushed himself to the limit. Jake, Varx's voice echoed softly, filled with awe. You've done it. You saved us all. Jake nodded, though he could barely find the strength to speak. He had done what needed to be done, but at what cost? The ship slowly drifted in the stillness of space, and Jake looked out at the endless stars. The journey was far from over, but for now, they had won. Humanity was safe for now, and Jake, once just a mechanic, had become the protector of the future. But he knew that his greatest challenge was still ahead of him. The awakening had begun, and now, it was up to humanity to decide how they would use the power he had unlocked.